Hey, I'm Mike Myers, and this is the Songwriting for Guitar podcast, which is geared to support songwriters and producers to gain confidence and turn pro. I bring on industry experts to help you improve and monetize your skills, engage better in the writing process, and build healthy habits to create a sustainable career that you love. Caffeinated, inspirational, conversational. Hey friends, Mike Myers here with the Songwriting for Guitar podcast, episode number 88, Chelsea Nettleton. Now, I've had the privilege of coaching Chelsea for almost 6 months, and in this time, I've seen her grow into an amazing songwriter, a budding producer, really taking control of what she wants, her direction, her career. Now, here's the thing. It's not because the circumstances were perfect and that everything has aligned to work for her. If anything, in this episode, she talks about how there's so many reasons that were the opposite, that she should probably, chill, not do this. People would understand, but she has determination. She has this grit of just persevering, going, and just like kicking ass. That's why I wanted her on. And there's this phrase that I say a lot, and she jokes about it too. Do it again. She has embraced this idea of constant growth. Do it again. Write better songs, write better choruses. And I want you to hear her story, her thoughts on how do you take that action no matter what scenario you're in. So if you're someone that's been stifled in your creativity, your songwriting, and you're feeling like, man, I don't know if this is the right time. I'm waiting for these perfect circumstances. I want you to pause. I want you to listen to this episode. Episode is for you. So we're going to dive into it. Episode number 88 with Chelsea Nettleton. The reason I wanted you on was for several reasons, because your energy is infectious. Even when you feel like, when we have sessions and you're like, I don't know if you're always just like, you're boom, out of the gate. Like you've got that energy.
Hey, thanks. Even when I'm like, oh, my week was hell. And I'm giggling anyways.
Well, especially in this episode, I do talk about coaching and I'm like, coaching's important and, you should do this. But it's like to hear from someone that's in the nitty gritty of doing it. Yeah. That's in the thing. They're applying it. I meet with them weekly, especially the idea of, I say this phrase a lot, like, do it again, meaning, cool. Once you've done it, that's great. Repeat the process, learn from it and do it again. But do it again, when people hear that, they're like, well, they have every day you wake up and you make a conscious choice of either you can create something, you can work on your craft, or, and I don't mean to, guilt people, like you can just, there's more excuses not to do than actually to do.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's a story of life a lot of times.
Just for, I can riff on that, but I'm curious, why do you think that is sometimes?
Boy, gosh, where do I start? Well, I think a lot of us, even if we don't want to admit it, we're lazy by nature because, our bodies are built that way. Like we're actually built, kind of in that survival mode. So we adapt really quickly, so our bodies, like the easiest way to do something is the way our bodies are built. So if our bodies like don't have to do something, they're not going to do it. And I think our minds go that way too. So like the easier things are to do, we're going to do things that way. So if you don't have to do something, you're not going to do it. So if you have to put the effort into something, that's our body having to work, having to do something. And so that's why it's just easier to just not, let alone everything else that life is pulling us to do. So
there's so many circumstances around there just being like, there's no reason to do it today. You can do it tomorrow. Or the excuse I hear a lot is, I'll wait when things become a little bit easier.
Yes.
When things clear up and my time frees up.
That's the thing. When I have more time, and I used to be one of those people. Yeah. And that's where I find it interesting as to where I am now, because I just kind of got sick of myself telling myself, oh, well, when the time's right, or when I've got the right studio space, or when I've got, money to buy this or that, whether it's money, space, the right people around me, the right this or that, there's so many things that we can say, oh, well, when I have this or that. then I can do it. If you keep doing that, I mean, I did that for years. And I was like, I just got kind of sick of it. And I'm like, no, knock it off.
It's easy to look at those things because like you could be like, oh, the answer is a plug-in. And once I get that plug-in, it'll be a thing. Oh, once I meet the right co-writer, I'll start to really dig into that. Once I get the perfect space that is treated properly sound-wise, I'll be really able to dig. Once I get, there's never going to be a point where things are perfect.
Yep. I mean, I moved to Nashville. Well, I moved in and around Nashville 3 different times because I thought, well, if I move to Nashville, if I move to Music City, then that's when music's going to happen. Guess what? It didn't happen. Like, you know, and so I'm in Music City and music's not happening, you know, and I think actually that once I got over I moved to Music City and music didn't happen, so I guess it's never going to happen. Once I got over, my pity party, that's when I realized I'm like, oh, okay.
Ooh.
Yeah. Once I got over the pity party and I realized, okay, well, being in Music City obviously wasn't it. I got to figure out a way to make this work because I can't, no matter how much I try, I cannot get away from music. Like it won't leave me alone. Like I have literally tried to put this on a shelf, shove it to the back, but then I'm out walking somewhere and a lyrics will hit me and I'm like, no, I'm not writing those down. No, I'm not doing it. And then I'm like, more lyrics will come after that. And I'm like, dang it, I have to write these down. I'm going to be mad if I don't, and then a melody will hit me. So, yeah.
I'd be curious to dive into that because you said, once I get over that pity party, I feel like some folks, it's hard to because it's, living in that space sometimes feels kind of good, but also a little, it's kind of that, I don't know, that self-deprecation. It's just like this weird little space of like, because it's like, everything's against us and if only, and it's just like, I felt that too. But what was that space that allowed you to cross that bridge, especially for someone that's like, I want to get there, but man, I'm still in this zone.
Like psychology fascinates me, right? So there's this thing called a victim mentality. And, usually you associate that with relationships and, things like that. I actually started realizing I had that with music and passions and things like that. And I started noticing it with other people. I was like, wow, they kind of have a victim mentality with they're not pursuing this, that, or the other because, they're treating it like, oh, well, I couldn't do this. And therefore I can't do my, my passionate, my love, my sport, my this or that. And then I was like, oh, look at those, I'm pointing at other people. Look at those 3 fingers pointing back at me. And I realized I was doing it with music where, I tried to move to Nashville, tried to move to Music City, and it just for numerous reasons just didn't work out. I wasn't in the right headspace. I had a lot of different things going on. And I realized I had the victim mentality. I was letting myself have that victim mentality when it came to music because I was going, oh, well, I tried to move to Nashville and it just didn't work for me. And, oh, I guess music's just not supposed to be my thing. I auditioned for American Idol and, oh, I didn't make it. And, oh, woe is me. I'm trying. I really am. When in reality, I just was, doing kind of the bare minimum. And it was almost like I was giving myself excuses as to why I wasn't making it and almost like giving myself a reason to say, oh, well, I'm just not supposed to do music because I didn't want to do the hard stuff. I didn't want to put in the effort. Because it was scary. Because if I actually put in the work and actually tried and then, it's scary, when you actually put in the effort and you actually put in the time, what happens if you actually succeed? I realized that victim mentality kept me from seeing what I could actually do, like what actually might be possible. And I was actually more terrified of success than I was of failing. Failure was comfortable. Failure wasn't scary. Failure was known. And I hate the word. I hate the connotation that failure gets. I think failure is actually a really good thing, but that's a whole other podcast episode. But, I realized I was more afraid of success because when you put the effort in, like something's going to happen. Even if you don't, let's say you don't become, I don't become a well-known artist, but let's say I find other students that I'm like, ooh, I can hear their talent. And maybe I learn the skills that I then help develop them. Something's going to come out of the effort that I'm putting into this. I'm going to find what I'm good at. But that was terrifying. And I'm like really diving deep,
There's a lot in that whole thing that you just said that I just want to dive into, because there's a ton. The first thing is, you're right. Sometimes we stay in failure because it's what's known and it's really comfortable, because if we step out of that and let's say we succeed, we're worried that it's not going to be consistent, that it's going to be this one-time high and then we fall and then we're back. And that feeling, how are we going to deal with? We haven't even stepped into it, but we're already creating these different scenarios of, oh, you will get success, but then it's going to fall and it won't be consistent. Right. So just stay where you are. That's the first thing I think about, where I'm like, oh, man, that's heavy. Even though you may not like it, you stay there because it's known. And it's like, I'd rather deal with the devil that I know instead of the devil that I don't know.
Exactly.
And then looking at others around you and seeing that you're mirroring a lot of what they do. And that they're, if they're like, well, I would have been a great football captain, but if the coach had what was it? I think it's Napoleon Dynamite. My favorite scene, Uncle Rico sitting there. Yeah, if coach would have put me in, we would have gone to champions. If we would have gone to champions, I would have gone pro. I'd be in a millionaires. I'd be in my mansion, my hot tub, soaking it up with my soulmate. That's what it's funny because I think because people love to do the sort of kind of like sad little violin of da, 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 everything was against me and if only, but really what you said. And I think that takes a very big, honest look of like, I thought I was trying, but I was doing the bare minimum. Yeah. And that to me is a shift in your mind of being like, I've been saying these things, I'm giving it my all, but like, I'm not really applying into the things that are necessary. I'm applying into the things that I think are, but they're not moving the needle. And so I need to rethink this and just not, if you don't do it, okay. Does it still bother you? Yes.
Right.
Okay. Then exactly. What do we need to do? So after all of those scenarios of you realizing this and trying to make those shifts, which for some, it's a pendulum shift from one side to the other. It's hard to get there. How did you incrementally move to then slowly moving into that route of like, then being consistent with creativity and embracing that and seeing that change?
I actually did have to kind of set music aside, but it was no longer like the pity party. It was no longer the, oh, woe is me. Music just isn't going to happen for me, blah, blah, blah. It was, I purposely had to kind of make a choice and be like, okay, I'm setting music aside in that this is not something that's not in my life anymore. This is just I have to focus on my mental, and my headspace. And so I've done counseling before, but I had a new focus on it, and I had to work through that victim mentality because it was in my music. I knew it was in other areas of my life. I mean, it was in my relationships, so I had to take a really deep dive into my headspace in general, just in my life. I mean, it's not that I like put music on a shelf. I mean, I definitely wrote about it, but I just wasn't thinking about music from any other standpoint other than, kind of a therapeutic. I was just, anything that came to mind, I'd write it down, but otherwise it was just, journaling and, therapy kind of thing. So there was a big deep dive, probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years, after my husband and I were able to move out to Colorado to be back near my family. So we took a physical shift, literally, to be back near family, near where it was, a comfortable, safe place. And then, did some counseling, for me. And that shifted everything because it was like, basically, I just realized I was like, not only did I have that victim mentality, but I had that thought of, I'm not worth it, and then I don't have anything to offer. And, and when you realize that that's where you're stuck, you know, and that's why you're not pursuing the things that that you feel are, like, for me, I feel like my music is God-given talents. Like, again, whatever they may be, you know, they may be, you know, working with other people to develop their talents, or it might be that I get to do, you know, maybe my music will go somewhere someday. I don't know, you know, but that's what I'm exploring. But I know that I'm supposed to do something with it, you know, but until I really figured out that I am worthy and that I have something to offer people, my music, I realized for so long that my music, I was looking at it as, oh, please tell me that I'm good enough. Like, please listen to my stuff and listen to my voice and tell me that I'm worth something. And I realized, I'm like, no, that's not what I want anymore. Like, I want to offer my music and whatever I have to give. I want to be able to give that now. I want it to be something that people listen to and go, oh man, that really hits me, like, in my heart. And like, oh, that makes me, you know, whatever it may be, you know, helps them, encourage them, helps them get through their day. You know, I don't want it to be about me anymore. And I genuinely mean that now. I used to say that, but it was hard to really believe it until I like went through the hard stuff, you know? So that's really what shifted it, was working on my own head. So, and I giggle about it because it's, you know, it's hard. I mean, like, when I giggle about it, that's my way of kind of, you know, it's like that nervous laughter kind of, where it's like, it was deep, it was intense, there was a lot of tears. It was good though. It was good. And I can giggle now on the other side of it. Like, if that makes any sense.
Well, just that shift, that moving from, I don't feel I'm worth it, to like, oh no, I'm absolutely worth it. Like, I'm absolutely worth diving in and creating things because it matters, because I believe that, you know, this is what I should be doing. And, you know, who knows, like, this might, and that sort of freeing to attitude of, if it happens to be that my songs go here, awesome. If it happens to be that I can help someone, amazing. You were open to the idea of where it would go, instead of being this way. And if it doesn't go this way, then it's a failure. And then everything. And some people are very focused. You know, for me, it was always like, oh, my band, we have to get signed. We got to get signed. If we don't get signed, then that means I failed at music and I can't do music and I can't. No.
Right. And that was me too, like, as an artist. Yeah, exactly. That was me for a long time. It's like, oh, I'm not successful because I'm not a signed artist. And I'm like, thank God I never became a signed artist. Like, truly, now I look at that and I'm
so
like,
glad
oh my gosh.
Too.
From what I've learned since then and what I've heard, like some of the horror stories, I mean, there's some of it's fine, you know, but oh my gosh, like, I'm so glad I didn't go that route.
I would have ended my music career probably way sooner had that happened.
Exactly.
You know, I don't want to assume things, but I would have missed out on tons of things and tons of experiences that were informed in the path that I took. And if you really get the thing that you want, I don't think sometimes it's like, oh man, I'm so glad I think it's a very mature, because then you step into the things that you do want to do, and you suddenly see that, I don't know, like, you know, before you saw the tree and now you see the whole forest and you're like, oh man, I'm so glad I didn't get that, because now I actually see the bigger picture.
Right. No, exactly. I can totally relate to that. That's exactly how I feel too.
What I love about how you've grown as a songwriter is you've also embraced production, which I think is a big hurdle for a lot of people. There's this thing, there's just like this, like, when you mention the idea of, hey, could you create a little work tape for and people just instinctively go like, because where do you start?
Right.
How did you tackle that?
Boy, you know, it's funny because I've been quote unquote working in Logic for, good Lord, 15, 20 years, however long it's been. I don't even know how long it's been around, but like, technically I've been working on it as kind of as long as I've been trying to quote unquote pursue music. I promise I will try not to quote too much in this podcast. But you know, you could do as many little quote unquote quote.
They're like rabbit ears to me. They're just kind of like
oh man. You know, but the reason I do the quotes is because working in it, as in I've had Logic for, however long, 15, 20 years. Working in it is a different story, because I used to think, probably as a lot of people do, that was the final, you don't use Logic, you don't use a DAW, whatever, you don't, and I didn't know what DAW stood for like maybe up until about 6 months ago. What is it? Digital Audio Workstation, I think. Whatever you record your music in.
That's it.
So I use Logic, and I didn't know up until 6 months ago that it's not just what you use, to record the final, which was always super intimidating, because I was like, oh gosh, okay, so then I have to have everything practiced and perfect and honed. So I wouldn't really touch it. I mean, I would think about using it when I was like, okay, I think I've got this song almost ready, kind of, but then I have to play the guitar, and I have to play the guitar all the way through. I can't screw up. I have to do the vocals all the way through. I can't screw up. And then I wouldn't do it, because it's like, oh gosh. And then I'd get super intimidated, and I, get overwhelmed, and then I wouldn't want to do it, because it was just tiring. And then I wouldn't, enjoy the process. And I thought, well, shoot, maybe I'm not supposed to do music because I'm not enjoying the process, okay. And so this has been my experience over the past, couple years as I've had Logic. And then when I started working with you totally flipped it on its head. And I was like, wait, what? So when I first started working with you, it was amazing. And when you said, I can't exactly, I don't remember how you worded it, but what I heard was, this is not the final. You don't use Logic or your DAW. You don't use it for the final process. Use this as your songwriting companion. And I was like, wait, what? Can you one more time? Like, yeah. Can you expand on that, sir? Cause I like the way that sounds, and basically what you had kind of explained to me was, this is your friend. This is not the enemy, which is kind of what it had become in my head, only because it was so daunting to me at the time, and so the way you had explained it and kind of walked me through it was, this is your buddy. Like, this is your friend, because, you have an idea, you've got a melody. Cool. Get it down, record it right that moment. If you have an idea for the tempo, great, get it down, and then you start doing, you've got maybe a guitar, a lick, even just a little bit of it, get it down. Great. And the more that you do that, the quicker it's going to come, for one thing. But then all of a sudden, you get, your first verse down, or you get your chorus down, whichever comes first, and everybody's different. I mean, I've heard people say, oh, always start with the chorus, but everybody's different, And so all of a sudden, I send you my first song, and we work on it that first week. And it took me quite a while. I mean, I had the basics down of Logic before you and I met, because I had slowly been working in it, learning some of the basic tools, or, the different tools in there. But when you flipped it on its head and we're like, no, start using it now, don't worry about plugins. Don't worry about anything else. Just use anything that's in Logic, and I listened to you. I was a good student. And I listened to you, and I used it only what Logic had, and I didn't even do anything fancy with anything, except for I always like to put effects on my voice when I'm singing, because it just makes it fun. So, and that like, to quote Aladdin, a whole new world, like that opened up my world, and it was like from that moment, I was like, oh my gosh, how have I not known about this to this point? So that, like, even just from like day one, that just like blew my world open. And suddenly I felt like Logic, it was like, oh, I get to go sit down at my computer and like play with my, okay, that sounds inappropriate. I get to play with my friend Logic. No, I get to sit down and, how do I word this properly? I get to sit down and, I mean, you get the point, but it was just awesome. It was awesome. Does that answer the question?
So you are a fantastic, it does more, even better. You are an amazing student, because you've also grown into an amazing songwriter, because You're
Thank
not
you.
looking for it to be perfect. You're willing to use this as a tool to grow. You're willing to not be held back by like, hey, won't we try this? Cool, let's try this. Cool, let's do it. Cool. You take the suggestions that I give and you apply it, because through application, you actually start to see like, okay, this works.
Oh, yeah.
This isn't for me. I like this. Don't like it here. Oh, maybe I'll change it. But you got much quicker. Because that first song, it takes a while. Because that machine gets going. And then, of course, I would tell you, that's great. Do another one.
Do it again.
Do another one.
I love it.
Do it again. Do it again. But what I love even more is every week there would be something new, despite what your week may have looked like, despite what was going on, despite things. And I think this is the myth that I want to kill, is people always think that more time is always going to be the solution.
Right.
I don't think it is.
Yeah. And I am an absolute testament of that. So anybody listening to this that thinks that that's the case. Okay. So the last 6 months, I won't go into details because that'll just bore y'all. But the last 6 months have been the most intense and busy and just insane 6 months probably of my life. And of course, these are the last like 6 months that I decided, were the time to start working with Mike. And literally from like maybe like the third week working with him, just my life just kind of exploded with, and not all bad stuff, just random stuff. And it was like, but I was like, but that was what was cool about him teaching me that, this is your, like the logic is your friend. This was actually, oh, good. Okay. In the midst of the chaos, I was like, I'm going to go sit down at my desk in my little, patchwork studio, and I'm going to use my DAW and I'm going to get this out. And I'm excited to release some of these songs that I've been working on during this process, because you guys, anybody that's listening to this podcast will kind of hear then the progression of some of the songs will make sense then because of, what's been going on in these 6 months, and kind of that cinematic process. But if I didn't have time and I made it, y'all are fine.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. What I'm so proud about is how you just stayed with, like, as you said, there was so much going on.
Yeah.
And this is where I was like, this makes me feel even more confident. Like when our time ends, I'm not worried. Like, I wonder if you'll keep it up. It's like, no, if you showed up for yourself, even in the midst of so many things saying like, oh, people would understand if you just didn't do it right now. Who would?
Right.
But you did. When you, when you have even more time, you're going to use it even better. Like you're going to get even more done. You're going to move fast because you use the time that you had. And I feel every time that somebody like, applies for coaching, they're just like, I'd love to do it, but right now my time is, I'm like, I don't even think that that's always a sign for me already that I don't think they're ready for coaching, because they think more time is going to be the solution. It's like, actually, no, I'd rather you just have like this little bit of time and just make it super focused. And that's why you are still so awesome with it, because you don't overload your demos. You add what's necessary to get the vibe and the feel. So when I listen to it, I'm like, so that we can then go from there. That to me is much more valuable in our time together.
That was so encouraging too. Because like when you go to listen to something and you're like, okay, I know what you're trying to do here. I hear this. Oh, perfect. Okay. Yeah, I hear this. And it was so encouraging because it was just very simple. Like I had, usually a piano part, I had my vocals, and I would put down anything that I heard, like, but I wouldn't I think at first I was like, ooh, because I was of course nervous because I'm like, you're this big songwriter guy, and, wanted to like show you what I could do. So at first I was like trying to add stuff in, but then I kept it really basic. And it was so funny because the more basic I kept it, actually, the more you could hear where you're like, oh, I totally hear where you're going with this. And here's where when you build this out, this is going to be one on your, list. And that was so cool because I was like, yes, that's exactly it. Like, oh my gosh. All right. And it felt so cool.
For me, it was easier to find where you were going because you added just the core elements that were important to convey the idea that allowed me to go like, I know where this is going, because our goal from the start was 5 songs. I want you to have 5 songs that have been refined. Yeah, and so that means we're going to have to dig in. You're going to have to write a lot. You're going to have to get uncomfortable. There are moments where I'll be like, it's not a bad chorus. Maybe you should do that again and do it again. And you'll write another chorus.
Yeah. Or or do it again.
But you did.
And it was so funny because at first in my head, I was like, I don't believe you. And that I'll be able to write again. And sure enough, I did. I was like, oh my gosh. He was right.
Why do you think that you had that thought like, I might be out of songs?
Well, because that had been the case up to this point, and that was one of the reasons that I really wanted to do coaching with you, because that had been what I thought was my experience up to this point. But I think that's because of how I was approaching songwriting at the time. Maybe it was because I was looking at the way, other people did songwriting. Maybe I just hadn't found my style yet, and the way that my brain works. And I think that was what was so cool when you unlocked Logic for me, so to speak, using a DAW. Like, I think that unlocked the way that my brain, because I have like I know they're science out there says there's, kind of that myth now that there's a right and left brain, but going to that, using that kind of that right and left, the logic versus the creative, like I have basically kind of a 50-50, I'm not like 100% creative and no logic. Like I have very, very even left and right. So I think my brain really likes the fact that we can be a little bit organized by using logic. Okay, so that's getting confusing. So the logic brain, and then, using Logic, the software, but being able to be organized, and then being able, because I really struggled when I would try to write a song and I could hear things, but I didn't know how to get them out, in my head, whether it was a melody line or if I heard a sound. I didn't know how to like write that down though on the paper if I'm just like journaling a song, and and then it would fly out of my head faster than anything. So when you started teaching me how to use the DAW, at minimum, which was one of my favorite things, was then to send you the little track recording when I was like, okay, I'm still learning how to do drums. So I would just do a drum track literally that was vocals, and I was like, and I would have so much fun sending you those tracks to be like, Mike, how do I do drums like this?
But I love that. I love drum noises like that are just like, or just like a swell or something.
And you understood.
But that made it easier for me.
Yeah. And I think I even did it the other day where I was like, how do I do this like vocal rising?
It made it easier for me when you were just like,
and so I think just having those tools. And I think that's what really opened up songwriting, was being able to have those tools, again, at minimum of at least being able to do an audio track of, I have no idea what this sound is, but here's what it sounds like. I don't know which instrument this is or how to do it, but I want to make it sound like this. And then, being able to get that down on audio, at least get the idea down. And that made my brain so happy. And then that opened up a lot of stuff from there. So I think that's really what kind of opened things up for me.
Hey, it's Mike. I'm jumping in the middle of this episode to remind you that if you've been listening to this podcast, you've been enjoying these episodes weekly, but you haven't left us a review on Apple Podcasts, can you do that right now? Especially if you're listening to this episode on Apple Podcasts. You just need to scroll down. You can leave us a 5-star review, talk about your favorite episode. And if you want to go over and above, share this with a songwriting friend. Post this on your favorite social media platform. Share this knowledge. We do our best to bring awareness to the podcast, but every little bit helps. So leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and then share this episode with a friend. All right, let's dive back into the episode. I think especially for people recording, they always get overwhelmed that they don't know, they're not going to know it. But really, it's like what was cool, when we're working on like a song that you have, I'm always like, oh, the part is perfect. Like, this is what the part should be. Let's just change the sound and do this. And it kind of reiterates, oh, the thing that was in your head, that was it. You're on the mark. Like, you're on the right track.
Yeah.
You're not off. You're not veering off into the wrong direction, going over. It's like, no, that was perfect. Now let's just do this. And now you're going to be like, oh, every time that I want this, I go here, here, here. Now we've got another little process, another little system that's going to be part of Chelsea's process. That's going to be part of her thing. And what's been so cool is to see you develop a system and a process that works for you. And I think that's the thing about, people assume with coaching is I just go in and I go like, do this, you do this now, do this. But it's trying to find out what works best for you and what's the most efficient and what gets you the end result that you like. And also too, can continue doing that. It's not like a one-off, that it's not just like a couple of times and like, oh, nope. But then here's what you have to do to maintain consistency.
Exactly. Well, and one of the other things that you taught me that made songwriting in general just feels so much less daunting. And I think it took me a couple of songs for me to realize that this is what you were telling me, but you said, work on your verse and chorus and just send that over. And then we'd go through that and you're like, okay, great. Look at what you have. You basically have a song. You just need to write your second verse and your song, you've got your song. Cause then you add, you build up your second chorus, blah, 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 but you're basically done with this song. And I was like, oh dang, like you're right. Rather than looking at it as I've got to write a whole song, it's like, okay, you write your chorus and write your verse, and you're like 3/4 of the way there, really, because then you can play around with the bridge depending on what it needs, or if it even needs a bridge, and that just kind of blew my mind because then it made it a lot less daunting, and it was like, okay, now I can figure out what does this song really need at this point, and I was like, I can do this, but breaking it down into those pieces is really good for my brain anyways. That was so helpful.
What makes me feel even better is when you're just excited about the thing that you're working on.
Oh man. Yeah.
When I like logging on and the person that's on the other end just can't wait to like walk through this because they're so excited because they know whatever information they're going to get in this session, how we're going to walk through is going to get them to the next step that they can use and that they're going to run and they're going to apply it, that they're just ready to just because they're so excited about this because they feel like they reached another level and that this session is going to get them over here and then over here. And it's just this residual climb,
yes,
further to and getting them to where they want to be. That's the whole goal.
Exactly. Yeah. And that was so fun. And especially when it was like, okay, I'm trying to learn how to do, drums, and for whatever, since that's not my instrument, like my instrument, my number one is guitar, and then I do piano a little bit, but drums just still kind of baffle me, so working through those and realize that was another thing too, that really helped was realizing that like, just because drums are not my strong suit doesn't mean I can't complete a full song, realizing that there are ways, besides collaborating with other people, for now, while I'm learning and meeting people, I can still do like some really cool stuff. I just have to learn to use the tools at my disposal, and there are still some, obviously instrumentation to learn, but I'm not stuck. I'm not dependent on, so freeing, learning that it's like, I can do, there's so much stuff I can do.
I was just going to say that. I was going to say it feels freeing to watch that because I can see the change too.
Yeah.
That, in your view of songwriting, in your view of everything that I need is like up here. Mm-hmm. I'm going to find what unlocks it. Sometimes it's going to be a part, sometimes it's going to be a sound, sometimes it's going to be a pattern, but I don't have to freak out about the next song. I know whatever it needs is right in my brain because I've listened to a whole lot of music.
Yeah.
I know what I want to do. I just need to figure out what is the door I need to unlock.
Yes.
And what are the sounds and what are the things that are just going to help me get that idea out easily.
So true. Yeah. And that's a good point too. Cause with doing, active listening and, listening to the same song. I mean, I probably listened to this one song for this last song that I've been working on. I probably listened to my reference song in the car. I think I had like a 30-minute round trip, and I probably listened to the same song the whole time, specifically for the drums and also the dynamics, the build of the song, because it was almost exactly the idea that I was going for, and I was really trying to hone that in. And it, and it was so helpful, but it was so fun because it was like, listening to it, not going, oh, I could never do that. It was going, okay, so she does this. Well, I wasn't closing. You guys can't see me because it's podcast. I'm closing my eyes at the moment. I was not closing my eyes while I was driving, just so you know. But, but really listening to, okay, this one detail, I'm listening to this one part of okay, so she goes up here. Okay. Well, it was a female singer. I don't know who was doing the drums. But listening for this one specific part, listening to this again, I mean, that is so incredibly helpful. It is very valuable having a reference track. And that's the other thing that, Mike has taught me, like, listen to other music, with a very specific purpose in mind.
There's lots of things that make me happy when I hear you say that, but like I've experienced when I drive and I'm listening to the same song, like a bazillion times, the same song, because I'm listening to a different aspect, another thing. And when I hear someone say like, I've been driving, I've been listening to the same song because they're analyzing it, that makes me really excited because I'm like, you get it.
Yep.
You get it. There's so many different ways of looking at that song and absorbing that song and really doing that song justice, because like you're really going to understand it, not just like once or twice, but like literally 50, 60 times that someone maybe go, I'm hearing the same thing. But each time you're like, oh, okay.
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
I'm hearing a little bit something. Oh, I didn't. That's so exciting for me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's awesome. And even with this one, I'd already heard it, tons and tons and tons. And then this one day I was like, no, there's a nuance there that I really want to get, not so that I can completely copy it, but I was like, I wanted that feel. And I was like, what is it that they're doing there? I think I was trying to get the drum pattern so that I could kind of do something similar. And it finally clicked. I was like, okay, this is, and but it took listening to it, cause my brain, I mean, I have a little bit of ADD, so my brain like, and because I'm a singer, I immediately like want to sing along with her, she's like going, and I'm like, no, stop singing, shut up. Like, put tape on your mouth, and listen to the drums.
You didn't give yourself like, oh, it's going to take 5 tries. And if I don't get it in 5 tries, I guess, I'm not going to figure out the drums. But you just stayed with it as long as it needed to stay. I mean, if I were to take an extreme example, it's like Thomas Edison. It took like over 10,000 times before the light bulb was invented.
Yep.
I was reading a story about this. I forget. It was in Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And it was one of the stories about a gold miner. And he was in this mine where he had sourced gold for a good amount of time. And then one day it just stopped. And so he was like, I guess it's done. And then he sold his equipment. And the guy he sold the equipment was like, well, before I just sell this again and just pawn off this equipment, I'm just going to get someone to take a look at this place where he was mining. He had to move 3 feet and there would have been like way more gold. 3 feet. And he was fine just being like, I guess it's done. And I'm just like, what the hell? I feel like we're always like that. We're always so close to the things that we can do, but like, and we've just like, I guess it's not going to happen, but we are literally like 1 or 2 little steps from it actually happening. And what I love, if somebody's listening to this, I feel like you are a great example of someone who's just developed their skill insanely in such a short period of time, but you've been willing to allow yourself to be uncomfortable, push yourself to the extreme of just like, and I don't mean like, like Code Red Mountain Dew extreme, like Code Red Mountain Dew extreme, but like
we are the extreme,
but like in the extreme of just like, how quickly could I write something?
Yeah.
I don't have that much time, but I'm curious, what can I actually get done?
Right.
And actually just see, what are you capable of? And then surprising yourself with the things that you're creating. Because each time you just push yourself a little bit, you're going to surprise yourself.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks like it's only a select few. And I'm like, I don't think it is a select few. I think it's just people that are willing to be uncomfortable. They're willing to push themselves. They're willing to get feedback too and just ask and just ask for help.
That's huge.
And if they do that, because sometimes I feel like our sessions, I feel like I'm just looking into the things that you're doing and I'm like, move a little bit to the right, move a little to the left, do this. There you go. It's just kind of like looking into your process. That's how it feels.
Yeah. Which is so cool. And that's encouraging, because it's like coming and going, okay, which I still remember there was one time when I brought you a song that I was like, well, because I think it was one of those weeks where it was like one of the worst weeks in this 6 months of, just garbage, craziness. And I think I literally, so speaking of how fast can I write something, I think that was one of the weeks that I didn't have time during the week. And I literally wrote something the night before our session. And I was like, well, I will not come to a session empty handed. And so I sat down, I wrote a piano piece. I got at least the chorus and the verse lyrics. And I brought it to you and you're like, this is your best piece so far. And I was like, are you serious? And I wrote it in like an hour and a half the night before, but because I had the process and I'd been working up to that. And this was the week before was, this is great. Do it again. So I took, kind of the template from the week before, but I wrote, new melody, new lyrics, but stayed in that same tone, did it again. And you're like, this is now your best piece. I was like, are you serious? I'm like, that felt so good. Because it was like, I wasn't bringing you something just to bring you something, but I was like, I'm not bringing you nothing. And this will not be garbage. Like, I'm going to work on this, but I still was like, I did this in an hour and a half. And for you to be like, man, this is, and I was like, I think I almost even started crying. I think there's been a couple Fridays that I was crying for good reasons. I mean, for good tears.
I remember that. And it was because you had done songs before.
Uh-huh.
The reason I say like do it again is because like you get the wheels turning and the wheels go.
Yep.
But you also stayed within your wheelhouse. So many songwriters are frustrated because they just move on too soon. They don't stay and perfect something and perfect a style, a genre. They're quick to move on and they're like, oh, I could write a lot of songs. And it's like, yeah, you can write a lot. I want you to stay here.
Yeah.
And I want you to just like work on this. And you did. But I think what also worked was the mindset that you said, I am not going to just like, you chose. And again, not to say that the week wasn't serious, but you didn't allow the week to be like, well, that's how the song's going to be too.
Right.
It's going to be off. You were just like, nope, I am going to do. But here's the thing. A lot of people are like, and I'm trying to find the nice way to say this is like, people allow a lot of things to spill over.
Oh yeah, big time.
And and I think there's many reasons that we could be like, oh, I totally get it. Like I wouldn't be like, a cruel heartless person be like, don't allow this spill out. If you would have said, hey, it spilled over and it was a crazy week, I would be like, that makes sense.
Yeah, no, you're super nice, super kind.
You were like, no.
Yeah.
I'm just going to do it.
Yeah, that was for me.
You know what it is? It is. And that's why it's like, I remember hearing, oh man, this is the best chorus you've written so far.
Yeah.
And because just because your week was like that doesn't mean your creativity and the work that you put in is going to hightail it.
Yeah.
And leave you high and dry.
Right.
You've put in the work. So for when it comes to those moments, it still shows up because you showed up.
And that was what was so cool because I feel like that's what's changed through working with you and like through coaching and stuff was now I know I've always wanted to be able to hone those moments of like just I mean, obviously, we like to hone the moments of, oh man, things are great. And I want to write a happy song, blah, 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 but being able to hone those moments of just garbage or life is hard right now, or, we want to write a powerful song that hits people, when we're going through the garbage and we want to be able to reach out to people that are going through that stuff. but I hadn't been able to do that to this point because a lot of times I would just kind of get stuck in the mire. And I think for whatever reason, like through coaching and through working with you and being able to get my process down, I feel like now I can do that because I've done that now through a lot of these songs that I've written, you know, working with you. Like I've seen it, you know, because I mean, the song I'm working on right now, you know, am I going to make it? You know, am I going to make it out alive? You know, like it's do or die, baby. You know, like, am I going to make it?
Good.
You know, and that creativity, like it's not gone away because the week was bad or, you know, things are hard. Like I've been able to harness that and use that now as a tool. And that's what I've always wanted to do. And I feel like I have the tools now to harness that tool, you know, and it's so exciting and it's so therapeutic for one thing, you know, to be able to sit down and like work on music and like get that out, let alone hoping that it, you know, helps other people someday.
And it will. And that's why I wanted you on, because I feel this is, you know, for anyone that's listening and is like, well, you know, I don't know if I have time. You do have time.
You do have time.
This is like, I think you are the perfect model to like, we could just call this the episode, You Do Have Time. We'll just put that in, You Do Have Time.
You do have time.
Because it's just that looking for it. And I'm so excited to just see these 5 songs and it's like in their full production, the whole shebang.
Yeah.
But also too, I'm excited for the next batch of songs after that. Because I am too. Man, these are good. The next ones are going to be even better. So if somebody wants to follow you and musically, where can they find you? Where can y'all find me? So I do have a website. I don't know why I'm suddenly from Texas. I'm actually born and raised in Colorado. So you can find me at my website, chelsealeemusic.com. And then I'm also on Instagram. I don't have a special music account on Instagram. You can just follow my regular old Instagram account and I'll be posting. I'm going to start posting more music things there soon. So it's just Chelsea Nettleton. And I would love to have y'all's follows and keep you up to date on stuff. I'm hoping to be posting, releasing, whatever you want to call it, my 5 kind of, what do you want to call them? Cinematic pieces that I've been working on over these last couple months. Here, songs. Hopefully before the end of the year. Yeah, I'm gonna probably do them as like, I guess that is what they're called, aren't they? They are songs. they're called songs. Yeah,
they're called listening pieces, which are songs. I'm still learning the lingo, Mike.
Oh my goodness.
But yeah, so
Chelsea, this was awesome.
Thanks so much for having me. This was so much fun.
This was so good.
Yeah. This is great. I appreciate it. This is super fun.
And that does it for this week's episode. It was edited and produced by Chris Fafalius. I'm Mike Myers. Thanks for listening.